Hello and welcome to this week's Clarity Parents Chat. My name is Gerard Mijon with the Clarity Child Guidance Center. And today, as we know, because especially of COVID, there's been a lot of talk about self-care. And sometimes it seems like another thing to do for which we don't have time. And as I was researching the topic, I came across an excellent article in Forbes that was titled Self-Care is Not an Indulgence, It's a Discipline by Tammy Foreman. I will put the link in the chat, but she brings up a very important perspective on this topic. So today we're going to discuss self-care for parents who don't have time. And we look forward to an engaging conversation with our guest speaker, Jessica Knudsen, Clarity's president and CEO. Now, this talk is a production of Clarity Child Guidance Center. For those who don't know, we're a nonprofit treatment center solely dedicated to helping children 3 to 17 with their mental health. Now, this is a conversation, so if at any time you have questions, we invite you to put them in the chat box, and I will read them as we go. Now, Jessica Knudsen was named President and CEO of Clarity CGC in February 2019. She joined Clarity CGC from Holy Hill Hospital, one of North Carolina's leading psychiatric and addiction treatment facilities for children and adults, where she acted in a dual role as a Chief Operating Officer and Director of Risk Management and Performance Improvement. Jessica received her Master's of Science in Social Work from University of Texas at Austin and her BS in Psychology from University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. She received her license in Clinical Social Work from the state of North Carolina. Jessica, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here, Gerard.
Well, it's good to have you. Well, let's just start right away with how is self-care really important for you, because it is obviously very personal and relevant as a mother of 2 young children and a CEO of a busy nonprofit hospital. Can you remind us a little bit about your own background in this regard?
Sure. So I have almost 4-year-old twins. Their birthday is actually this weekend, so we are. This is a very timely for this topic because we are deep in party planning mode. In addition to everything I'm trying to get done for work. I was a little bit not unusual, but it took us quite a while to have the kids. So I was already pretty well advanced in my career. I was already in the COO role by the time I had the kids. So, definitely it's been a challenge to kind of keep up that level and pace at work while still taking care of, the two little ones that joined our family. So it's definitely something that I probably, like every other parent in the world, struggle with on a daily basis. And some days you hit it out of the park, and some days you do work well. Some days you're a great parent, and some days you miss the mark on one of those. And there's been a lot of talk about there's really not a work-life balance, but a work-life just getting to the point where you allow yourself to make mistakes sometimes in one of those areas. But nobody has a balance every day, 365 days a year.
Right, and it's something you, like you say, you work toward, and it's something you build over time. As you mentioned, you had already some very high responsibility, important responsibility before, so you had a schedule, and then your children came along, and then you had it added to that, so you had to really work things out. Now, the article that I mentioned earlier, Tammy Foreman makes the point that often self-care information is aimed at women, and in fact puts even more pressure on them to take care of everybody else. And I'm going to put the article in the chat because I really encourage our listeners to read it. But could you kind of comment on that point from what you see and hear in our culture today?
It was a great article, and I think it hit on a lot of points, because when you hear that word self-care, you do think the bubble bath or the pedicure or those kind of things. And she really makes the point that it's not indulgence. It's sometimes it's discipline and finding out what you need in your life to stay balanced and stay as healthy as you can. That looks different for everyone. For me personally, I have to get 8 hours of sleep a night. I mean, that's the one thing that if I give up on that, it has lots of consequences. That and eating breakfast. So for me, self-care is making sure I get to bed early enough that I can get that full night's sleep and get up in time to eat breakfast, because it sets things off if I don't do those things. But that means I have to give up on some other things. My son in particular is having a really difficult time staying in his bed. Now the kind of child therapist in me wants to, set those boundaries and have him sleep in his own bed. But I've realized in order for us to exist the best we can right now, I've got to let go of that a little bit. And no, he's not going to sleep in my bed forever. But if it means we both get a really good night's sleep and we're not up that extra hour kind of debating and going back into bed, back and out of bed, and I've had to kind of let go of that. And that's not always easy to kind of give up on that. But I just realized I'm a lot healthier, and if I'm healthier, I can better take care of them as well. But that's different for everybody. For some folks, it might be you have to exercise every day, and that's what kind of centers you and keeps you going. And so making sure you have that time built in. For other folks, it's finding time to read. I think what fuels us and what is truly self-care is different for each of us. So that's kind of the first step, is what is it for me? And then being kind to ourselves to allow time in our schedule to allow for those things. The indulgences are great too. I mean, yeah, you need that pedicure every now and again, but that's not what keeps me centered. And I think the other thing about that, and again, it's very individualized, if I'm overwhelmed, doing that kind of stuff can actually make me feel more overwhelmed, because I'm not able to relax. I should be doing X, Y, and Z. And so I have to be very mindful about when I schedule those type of things in, that it's not at a really busy point at work, or I'm not going to go do that this weekend as I'm trying to plan a birthday party. It's you have to find that balance and do it when it's appropriate.
Yeah, it's on in the article. She described how okay, here are all these other things that you can do to just be more available for everything else that so it's just like we're looking at self-care as like being more responding to a lot of other things, and what she's arguing is that it's like it becomes actually self-care can become a burden if you're, oh yeah, I have to be just like all these other people that are doing the all these other fun things. I mean, and it's good to have some, but it sounds like that can become actually another stressor finally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are only so many hours in the day, so I really have to make a conscious decision about how I want to fill those and what's going to be the best choice for myself and my family. Because it's that old cliche, but cliches are a cliche for a reason. If you're in that plane and those oxygen masks come down, they always say, put the mask on yourself first and then attend to a child or anyone that needs assistance. Because if I'm not well, I can't help anybody else. So it really is up to me to role model to my children that I set boundaries. And boundaries is a big one too with self-care. And I think this has come up a lot more recently with things opening back up again. You don't have to accept every invitation that you get, because people are anxious to get back out to dinner and have people over. And if you are just not comfortable doing that yet, that's self-care to say, I'm only going to accept a handful of these invitations so I can protect some of my time. And for me personally, it's been kind of a shock to the system to go from nothing for 14, 15 months to even in-person meetings again. I mean, that's just taking a little bit of time to acclimate. So part of that self-care is setting boundaries and knowing what you can and can't take on.
Yeah, and that is part of the self-discipline, because it's also difficult. And how do you I mean, what I'm hearing you saying is like you basically set priorities. And how would you say, how can a parents see, the priorities? What are the big needs, and how do they, what's the process there, you think, to help them discern, okay, this is core and this is secondary, and this is what I maybe need to change in the way I do things.
Well, again, there's a lot of variation depending on your family and your circumstances. I'm a planner. I get a lot of peace from kind of looking ahead at my calendar and anticipating those days that I know are going to be hairy, and making a plan and getting ahead of that, and doing as much as I can to be efficient ahead of it. Now, that's my personality. That's my approach to work. I mean, that's just kind of who I am. Other people do that a day at a time. So I think finding what organizational method works for you. Give you an example, I have to be in Austin the end of this week. We have family flying in for the birthday. There's a lot of moving parts. I had to sit down 2 weeks ago and kind of map that out. I couldn't leave that until the last minute to figure out, okay, how am I going to get back from Austin? Who's going to get the kids from school? How do we get to the airport? And I had to enlist our village too. I'm fortunate that we've got some extended family, and I'm not afraid to ask them for help. That's a big part of my self-care as well, is knowing where the end of my ability is, and that I can't be in all places at some time. So if you're fortunate to have an extra set of hands, don't hesitate to ask for that, because it's especially under a pandemic on top of all of this, we're all stretched pretty thin. So I'm very grateful that I've got that help that I can turn to. And not just my husband. I mean, that's a huge part of it. I'm fortunate that he's very supportive, but I've got a mother-in-law that's able to pitch in as well. So just don't be afraid to ask for help. It doesn't mean you failed. It just means there are only so many hours in a day.
Yeah. Well, so I hear two parts really in what you describe as self-care. Part is just as a basic healthcare or health maintenance, where sleeping, eating, and having a good rhythm in your time. And then the second part is more about self-discipline in terms of either asking for help, setting boundaries, having courage to say no sometimes, and so it's really two different parts, but really, and organizing ahead of time too is I think I can imagine, because if you don't, then you could have lots of chaos and a lot of surprises and stress, right? So this is not a given for everybody. This is somebody where people might need help sometime too.
Well, and you said a key word there, Gerard, is chaos. Is even the best laid plans. I can look ahead and think I have everything kind of lined up, but I have almost 4-year-olds. They often have their own agenda, and the pancakes aren't cooked quite right in the morning, and so that adds 20 minutes onto our morning routine. And so I think it's planning as much as I can, but then knowing it could all go to shot in a blink of an eye. And that's probably the hardest thing for me. That's the one I really struggle with, because I want them to be as attached to a schedule as I am, and that is not the case. And so I do have to take some deep breaths and remind myself that that's where they are developmentally. That's part of this age, and kind of roll with it a little more. And again, turn to my husband if it's to the point where I'm not gonna be able to take them to childcare that morning, and just trying to be as flexible as possible based on what the kids' needs are too, because they're different.
Yeah. So it's another factor. It's learning flexibility, really, which all of us grow over time. I don't know if you have any suggestion in terms of building that talent, because that's a big one.
And honestly, that is my biggest challenge, I think, right now, and where we are in terms of the ages of the kids. I've learned, and I try to role model this for my kids, that's when I have to stop and take a deep breath and kind of reset myself, because if I get agitated, that's just going to make them more agitated, and it just increases the level of chaos. So I've got to really center myself when I feel like I'm getting upset or agitated that things are getting off course. But that's a big challenge. I mean, sometimes I do have to tap out with my husband and say, and that's self-care. I have to go be in the bathroom for 5 minutes, please don't let them follow me.
Absolutely.
I need to reset.
Yeah, and you're mentioning two strategy I think that are very critical, and in my personal life as well. It's first is centering, and so that habit of just kind of going back to the place of calm internally. That is, and there are different ways people do that, but I think that is really, really important, even if it's 5 minutes a day. Here, that is a huge thing, and the other part is the teamwork, right? Not being, it's okay to just pass it on when you have a crisis and help with your husband or partner. What are there things too? I mean, when I was thinking of the articles, um, again, we speak of self-care as adding some new things, right? Okay, we're do more of this or do more, and then in the article, it sounds like more. It's like do less of things, right? Are there things that you've consciously just given up as a way to have a life, more balanced and to just adjust basically, or what do you have any recommendation about to parents about looking at that as well?
Well, that was an interesting side effect of the pandemic is I think we all got, we weren't as overscheduled. There weren't, even just during the day at work, rather than having to run to 3 different locations over the course of the day for meetings, they were all on Zoom. So, I was able to be a little more efficient because it was just logging on to meeting after meeting. And I think the same was true for personal time. You weren't going out to dinner every Saturday night. And I think that's the balance I'm looking for, is somewhere in between, where we still get that dedicated family time, where we're not overscheduled. And I say that after I've just signed up my kids for ballet and gymnastics and all the activities, but trying to strike that balance of not overscheduling them, so we still have just that free time together, because that was one of my blessings through the pandemic. Is we had just had large chunks of time at home on the weekends where we would just play with the kids, which was in retrospect really was a gift, that we weren't running from place to place. And I know I feel like I was able to grow a deeper bond with them and just improve our relationship.
I mentioned that in the last webinar last week is Dr. Twenji, it's a speaker at ClarityCon who wrote an article recently, and she did mention that parents, because of the pandemic, parents there were more time to connect with our kids. And that was very good for both parents and kids, really, in terms of mental health. That was actually, when that was happening and there was not, so much stress, it's not always the case, but it was very beneficial, and less structured time, less activity, which is important. Another point that the author makes is in this article is the concept of letting others take care of themselves. Can you speak a little bit about that? What does it mean for parents of kids, especially?
That's another tough one, especially with very young kids. I think at this age, my goal for them is for them to become independent, fully contributing members of society. And the sooner that they don't need me to do their laundry, their dishes, those type of things. And so we start small. They have to clear their dishes off the table and put them in the dishwasher. They have to put their dirty clothes away. They've got chores tied into a chart, and we do the positive reinforcement for that. In another couple of years, they will be able to do their own laundry, and that's my goal, is to teach them how to be self-sufficient. So I think that's one thing with your kids, is kind of teaching them how to take on those tasks. But it's also in your relationship. I don't do my husband's laundry, even though there's some, there's still some families where it's kind of natural for for one member of the family to do all the laundry. We kind of talked about it. Okay, we can both take care of that for ourselves. And that seems like a small thing, but it's if it gets me 10 minutes back in my week, that's significant to me. If there are days where our schedules don't match up, we know we're going to take care of ourselves for meals, and it's not either of our responsibility to take care of the other person. Not to say we don't sometimes, you know, if one of us has more time to cook dinner for the entire family and for everybody, but there's some nights it just doesn't line up, and we don't feel guilty about that or hold any grudge about that. It's we have to acknowledge that we're both working parents, and there's certain things that we do have to handle on our own. And it goes back to boundaries, is finding where your own boundaries are in your relationship with your family, and setting them appropriately.
And having these conversations about boundaries, right, with your spouse. And one thing to, so you have little children, 4-year-olds, so that obviously your involvement in their life is much more advanced or involved. But thinking of maybe of families that we help here, and I'm speaking as a parent of now adult children. One of the challenges that I see, and I've had experience, is like, how do you let go, right? And so kind of what do you see there in terms of the need for parents to let their children have their own experience as a way to self-care, to take care of themselves in a way.
That is probably one of the most difficult things about parenting. I mean, and I've got little ones, so I only imagine it's going to get harder and harder. The first time that they played in the backyard by themselves while I watched from the window was hard. I can't imagine them getting into their own car and driving away. That's got to be devastating. But I think, something my father always used to say to me, because, I packed up after college from North Carolina and did a program called Teach for America, and drove 5,000 miles away from home and packed up. And he said it's another cliche, but he's like, I want to give you roots, but I want to give you wings. That you've got a safe place if you need it, but I want you to go out and have your own adventures and live your own life. And so I think it's finding that balance of how do you make them feel secure enough, but still give them all the skills they need to be self-sufficient. And that includes self-care. That's part. I do talk to my kids about that it's important we go to bed at a certain time, because if you don't, they get cranky too. I think they got that from me. If we don't get enough sleep, we get cranky. If we don't eat well enough, if we don't eat healthy foods, we get grumpy. And you've got to talk to them about that from a young age, so they have the skills when they do leave home.
So helping them realize kind of like their actions have an impact, and it's not, it's let them experience the impact of their actions sometimes.
And one of the biggest thing I do try to do with them, and it's tough to do, is take responsibility for when I make mistakes, because we're all human. We all make mistakes, and I make a lot of parenting mistakes, and trying to role model for them that I don't always get it right, but when I do get it wrong, I'm going to say I'm sorry and take responsibility for it, and talk them through their reaction and their feelings related to it. Because the other part of self-care is also our emotional self-care, that we're not letting things go unsaid or fester, and we have to role model that for our kids, because they know if we snap at them, we have to close that loop with them and say, you know what, I'm sorry, I lost my temper, that wasn't okay. Do you need to talk about it? And sometimes they do, and sometimes they're, oh, I'm fine. It just really depends on the circumstances. But I think that's one of the most powerful things we could do for our kids is acknowledge that it's also emotional self-care and taking responsibility.
That is a great point. And we've covered a number of areas. You've talked about physical, we talked about relational, somewhat emotional. Other areas that you see are key areas that can help parents be more effective, maybe in educational, intellectual, relational, spiritual.
I think it goes back to the campaign we did for May, which was Mental Health Awareness Month, which was our FINE campaign. And I don't know if you've talked about it in other chats, but there's an old therapy saying that if you ask someone how they are and they say fine, it means they're frustrated, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. we're all more than fine. You know, there's something else going on there. And I think that's the first step of really truly self-care, is taking the pulse of how you are. And if something's off, taking steps to fix it. So if you're feeling a spiritual disconnect, it's reaching out to your pastor or rabbi, or wherever that connection is. If it's relational, it's having that conversation with your partner, if you can find time away from the kids. If you're feeling physical, it's okay, I gotta find way to fit exercise in, but it's really taking a pulse of how you're feeling is huge. And you don't have to do everything. I think you have to identify the handful of things that keep you balanced and keep you steady, and not feel like you have to do it all. You know, I'm never going to be the room mom at school. That's just the reality, and I can't feel guilty about that, because I've made some choices in my life that split my time a little bit more. But I'm going to love them as much as I can, and donate the money so they can get Chick-fil-A for their party, and ask them about it afterwards. It's just, we all have different things we can contribute, and we have to be okay with that.
Well, I think that's a wonderful way to close this conversation. I think that's we've covered a lot. I hope parents who are listening to this will be inspired. You're great example, and I appreciate your insight on what it's like to be a mom and an executive and a leader. So thank you again, Jessica. Great to have you. I'm gonna close with just a few announcements. This is the last episode for the spring of the parents chat, and I want to remind people that the previous recorded versions of these chats will be on or there are some on our YouTube channel, which is Hope for Children 1, number 1, or on our Teachable channel, which is Clarity Child Guidance Center. So clarity-child-guidance-center.teachable.com. So it's a Teachable where you can find videos and those recordings. The next announcement, the last announcement, is while we're taking a break for this, we're still very busy. We're celebrating our 135th birthday, and that's why we're having these T-shirts and the month of May celebration. We just ended, but you can still get T-shirts on our website. And you can also we also have the ClarityCon conference on July 23rd, where we're gonna host a series of 6 speakers, and we'll have some more. We have a total of 14 speakers this coming year, providing CEUs at ClarityCon. So again, thank you very much. Thank you, Jessica, and we will see you soon. Take care.
Thank you, Gerard. Take care.